Chapter 21, Flight Through the Five Passes. This chapter is titled Flight Through the Five Passes. With the help of Yellow Flying Tiger, Jiang managed to cross the Yellow River in a single night and then make his way towards Lintong Pass, the first of 5 passes. As many officials became exceedingly worried as to why Jiang failed to return. Throughout the entire night, Fei Zhong soon attained word of the situation and thus sat down with Yuhan to analyze their next move. Yuhan immediately placed forth his irrational suggestion. After attaining the consent of His Majesty, soldiers should be sent to retrieve Jiang immediately. As he is brought back and placed before the king, he should be beheaded as punishment for putting insult over the former's kindness. With Fei Zhong's consent, both ministers appeared before King Zhou and fully elaborated the situation. After deciding that Generals Yin and Lei are to be sent out to retrieve the runaway prince, they both charged through the west gates with 3,000 soldiers strong in immediate pace. Riding leisurely through Lintong Pass when hearing a sudden clamor of men and horses behind him, Jiang soon realized that King Zhou must have sent men in pursuit and thus galloped wildly atop his horse, not knowing where at all he was heading. As the soldiers of Shang shortly approached the unfortunate prince, one with immense speed, Master of the Clouds meanwhile attained sight of the situation from his green touring bed and immediately called Thunder Quaker to his side, ordering his disciple to quickly find a weapon at the Tiger Cliff. Thunder Quaker met no true success before finding 2 delicious red apricots, which he devoured with great delight. Just at the moment that he was going to resume his search, a sudden strange transformation took place. 2 wings sprouted from both shoulder blades while he grew silver tusks and long red hair. Even though he had no desire to see his master again with such an appearance, he had no true choice once Golden Haze Lad, an assistant disciple under Master of the Clouds, called him back to the cavern. With great delight over his disciple's transformation, Master of the Clouds handed Thunder Quaker a golden cudgel and immediately taught him how to wield it with exceeded renown. After the essential mastering of his new weapon, Wind was written on his left wing while Thunder on his right, thus giving him the ability to soar through the skies with his new wings at will. Before Thunder Quaker was to take his leave, Master of the Clouds thoroughly told his disciple that he is to ensure his father's safe arrival at the western foothills, but at no account should any soldier be killed during such an incident. Leaving the mountain in immense pace, Thunder Quaker called continuously from a neighboring peak to see if a certain man below who was fleeing in great speeds atop his horse was truly his father, the Grand Duke of the West. Riding to the peak and being told that he is none other than Thunder Quaker, the young child that was saved by his hands 7 years in the past, Jiang told the former that on no account should any individual of Shang be hurt lest his punishment becomes even greater than current. Ensuring his father that he will persuade the generals to retire their pursuit, Thunder Quaker stood resolutely before the entire army shortly, declaring that not a single individual is to pass unless they wish for their own death. As the Shang soldiers reported such a case to Generals Yin and Lei, the latter 2 ragefully advanced towards Thunder Quaker's position. Chapter 22, Return of the Duke. This chapter is titled Return of the Duke. As Generals Yin and Lei thus appeared before Thunder Quaker shortly, they charged fiercely at the latter while bursting into laughter at his attempt to protect Jiang through vaguely connected bonds of filiality. Determined to end this incident quickly, Thunder Quaker cleaved the crag of a neighboring mountain into 2 halves in a single strike with his golden cudgel, thus sending the whole Shang army fleeing in great fear for their lives. Now returning to his father, who laid on the ground in shock, Thunderquaker urged Prince One to get on his back so that he could be transported safely to the western foothills without any additional delay. Weeping profusely over the void attempt to bring along the horse that has served him faithfully for over 7 years of time, Ji Chang had little choice but to calmly tell the horse to run off to a new master while grabbing hold of his son's back and returning immediately to his native land. Arriving beyond the 5 passes shortly, Thunderquaker left his father momentarily, thus forcing Ji Chang to travel day and night on foot with great misery. As Prince One eventually approached and one day during his travels, he shortly elaborated his identity before being offered a flour-grinding donkey from the innkeeper as a mount while personally escorting the former back to his capital. Crossing through the Golden Chicken Range and Mount Xiang, breezes of late autumn soon filled the skies with great desolateness that touched Ji Chang's longful heart to return to his family of long ago. Tai Jian, the mother of Ji Chang, soon realized through divination that her son was to return exceedingly soon, and she thus told everyone present within the capital of such long-awaited news. As each minister rode from the capital with banners and great gifts of offering, they soon caught sight of Ji Chang and presented themselves before him in unparalleled happiness. With Supreme Minister San Yisheng thoroughly elaborating the historical records of King Tang and his revolution to overthrow the Xia dynasty after being captivated for so many years, he compared this to the Grand Duke's incident and offered him a chance to do the same for the sake of the people. However, Prince One retorted by saying that such words shall never be spoken again, for he could not do anything as disloyal as rebelling against the king after receiving such merciful honor from the former. As everyone present became somewhat convinced by his speech, Prince One returned to the dukedom shortly with people cheering left and right in happiness at their master's safe return. Arriving before Mount Small Dragon and seeing his 99 sons standing before him, Ji Chang fell from his horse with tears of agony upon the remembering of the one son that was not present, Bo Yi Cao. With the help of his sons, Ji Chang suddenly coughed up a large slice of meat that strangely turned into a small white rabbit. Such was reciprocated 2 more times immediately with the same result. As everyone present sat in shock while the 3 rabbits ran to the west, they placed Ji Chang under the care of a doctor for several days to await his recovery. After the innkeeper was handsomely rewarded for his reported deeds before returning to his home, San Yisheng personally sat down before Prince One and stated that an attack upon Morning Song would be a rational choice considering the current circumstances despite the loyalty that the prince may possess. With Nangongqua suddenly appearing before the prince while stating that an attack upon the capital as essential, Prince One reprimanded them both by declaring such an action as disloyal and without virtue to attack your own master despite what qualities that they may possess. After Nangong exclaimed the death of Bo Yi Cao as a clear action of cruelty that is deserving of punishment no matter what the consequence may be, Prince One retorted by stating that such an incident was brought about through his son's pride and rashful qualities and isn't to be compared with the larger picture of loyalty. Either way, acting in such a sudden manner would not only stir up the people to make many sacrifices during such a war, but they will additionally lose a level of love and confidence towards their master due to being forced into a situation that they most clearly will not enjoy, for they love peace in all aspects. As both San Yisheng and Nangongqua clearly realized that the land should not be impoverished and provoked into war for the time being, Ji Chang stated that a spiritual terrace should be constructed in order to foretell any potential disaster within the future. Being afraid that the people will suffer through unnecessary trouble with such a project, San Yisheng reassured his Master that the immense dignity and gratitude that the people possess will surely bring him swift victory without a thought of defiance. Prince Wen became delighted at his reassurance, and thus issued forth a decree on the terraces. Construction. Chapter 23, Dream of a Flying Bear. This chapter is titled Dream of a Flying Bear. As Prince Wen's notices were posted up for the spiritual terrace's potential construction, it clearly stated that if any are to go out of their way to assist in the construction, they are to be paid 1/10 of a tael of silver as gratitude while being allowed to discontinue without any form of compulsion whatsoever. Being overjoyed at such a chance to show their love to Prince Wen, every individual was clearly willing to work wholeheartedly on such a project without any regret. Issuing forth the projects. Start on an auspicious day. After hearing such joyous news, the spiritual terrace was effectively created under 10 months of time, leading his civil and military officials out to gaze forth at the terrace. Prince Wen was the only individual present that exclaimed a level of depression, for the terrace was in need of a pool in order to meet the requirements of the yin-yang theory. As such words were passed on to the people, everyone present began its immediate construction. In due happiness, digging profusely in their attempts, human bones were found and placed off to the side due to being a blatant interference towards their work. However, Prince Wen soon attained word of such and ordered for the bones to be placed into small coffins and buried within a neighboring hill instead of being exposed, as would be a sign of disrespect. After watching the continued work of his fellow people until night, Prince Wen enjoyed a meal with his ministers before retiring to rest within one of the terrace's rooms. Experiencing a strange dream involving a white-faced tiger with large wings, Prince Wen reported this dream to San Yisheng the following morning and was told that a highly talented minister is destined to be a part of the western foothills in the near future. Believing the former's words as truth, Prince Wen became determined to make immediate preparations in the finding of this minister. Now returning to Jiang Ziya, he had spent his time near Panchi stream constantly fishing throughout day. Tonight, while studying the way and reciting scriptures, while leaning on his willow tree one day, Jiang Ziya heard a certain man singing a song to himself, and soon realized that it was none other than a woodcutter. As Wu Ji, the woodcutter, sat down by Jiang Ziya's side and realized that he fished with a mere pole without a needle or any bait, at that he thoroughly mocked the former by stating that he wasn't very smart when it comes to such simple matters. After further discussion, Wu Ji was told by Jiang Ziya that he would kill a man that day within Phoenix City. Unexpectedly, the former became angry at such sudden words and left with a fury. Heading through the south gate of Phoenix City, Wu Ji swung his carrying pole of firewood from one shoulder to the other, which suddenly struck Wang Xiang, a city guard, in the temple, ending his life instantly. Being pushed before Prince Wen immediately, Wu Ji elaborated the case as being nothing more than an accident that possessed rather vague reasoning and more bad luck than anything else, declaring that the woodcutter will pay for his life nonetheless. Wu Ji was imprisoned inside a small circle near the southern gate to await his set punishment. Tear-stricken over what may be befalling his ailed mother back at their home due to his lack of support for over 3 days, Wu Ji was soon approached by San Yisheng and thoroughly elaborated the situation. Realizing that Wu Ji did not kill Wang Xiang out of any vile intentions whatsoever, he decided that it would be best to discuss the current issue at hand with Prince Wen and effectively suspend his punishment until autumn if at all possible. After reporting such a case with the prince the following day, the latter consented to Wu Ji's proposal for temporary freedom. Wu Ji thus immediately returned to his mother's side and told her the reason for his lengthened disappearance. Additionally elaborating the words of Jiang Ziya. As the reason for such an atrocity, Wu Ji set forth to Pianxi stream to meet the former. Chapter 24, From Fisherman to Prime Minister. This chapter is titled From Fisherman to Prime Minister. As Wu Ji ran quickly to the Pianxi stream, he saw Jiang Ziya sitting under his willow tree while fishing more calmly than ever, kneeling before the latter and asking forgiveness for his past ignorance. Wu Ji pleaded to Jiang Ziya to save his life from a destined death. After declaring himself as his disciple, Jiang Ziya told the former that if he wished to escape death, he must sit in a 4-foot hole throughout the night while covered completely with rice and hay. After such is complete, there should be no problems experienced in the future with the prior incident. With Wu Ji following his master's instructions throughout that night, Jiang Ziya meanwhile recited charms to cover up the Wu Ji's star and thus save him from potential death. As Wu Ji returned the following day and kneeled respectfully before Jiang Ziya, the latter told him to spend the entire morning selling his usual firewood while returning in the afternoon to hear lessons on military theory/stratagems, for Jiang Ziya could feel the expedition upon morning song drawing near and thus could use additional assistance if need be. Upon the arrival of late autumn, Supreme Minister San Yisheng recalled the incident of Wu Ji and asked Prince Wen if he could make a divination as to why the convict has not shown himself. After Prince Wen had effectively performed divination and realized through such that Wu Ji committed suicide out of fear for punishment, the former sighed in distress at such an outcome. As spring arrived in short time with everything around bursting with life, Prince Wen proposed to his ministers that a few days should be spent enjoying nature within the southern outskirts, with San Yisheng's suggestion to search for the destined minister of the western foothills. In addition, their journey soon began shortly. Enjoying fully the colossal beauty laid out before his eyes, Prince Wen became shortly distressed as he saw his troops killing leopards, wolves, and of the such unconditionally, as the area around him was set up as a hunting zone by General Nangong Kuo for the former's pleasure. The prince thus approached San Yisheng and solemnly told him that they are within the wildlife to simply gaze at the beauty around, not to kill innocent animals out of instinct, for the ancients of old would never act in such a manner as to harm their own benevolence. Joyfully continuing through the wilderness and gazing forth at many people enjoying the beauty of spring, Prince Wen caught ear on a certain song that 2 fishermen were singing. Believing them to be sages of the sort, Xianxia was sent shortly to investigate the matter. He returned by stating that the 2 fishermen simply heard and recited such a song from a mysterious old man near the Pianxi stream. Dismissing the 2 fishermen in distress, Prince Wen pondered over a single verse of the song that denoted the ignoring of power and wealth, and thus elaborated a story of sage Emperor Yao and his meeting with a virtuous man to San Yisheng as an example. Continuing on their way while hearing a group of woodcutters spouting a song of similar connotations to the former 2 fishermen, Prince Wen ordered an immediate investigation of these men. Being told that the same old man near Pianxi stream taught this song to the former in addition, Prince Wen was convinced that this man must be approached at all costs. Unfortunately for Wu Ji, however, he happened to be amongst the crowd and was instantly recognized as the convict who supposedly met death in late autumn. Realizing that he was indeed woodcutter Wu Ji, the former was placed before Prince Wen and thoroughly reprimanded as an immense threat that needs to be dealt with accordingly. Explaining his meeting with a man known as Jiang Ziya, Wu Ji promised to guide Prince Wen and his entourage to the former's location in exchange for freedom. Without any success on finding Jiang Ziya, Prince Wen was led to the sage's cottage, but immediately met failure again due to Jiang Ziya's random departures and unpredictable returns. San Yisheng thus told his master that it would be best for them to return to the palace temporarily while returning on a date that is presumed as more probable for the meeting of the former. Being extremely disappointed but nonetheless cooperative to his minister's suggestion, Prince Wen ordered his men to thoroughly purify themselves daily and wait for their second departure before Jiang Ziya's residence. In a different perspective of mind, General Nangongque stated that there is no definite knowing that this Jiang Ziya is the true sage that they are looking for, simply due to the songs that he composes and his unnatural abilities, for sages of similar quality would be more than likely present within the neighboring mountains in addition. However, San Yisheng retorted by stating that this man must be the destined minister from Prince Wen's dream due to the traditional manner that is need of being followed and his reputation amongst the neighboring populace as being differential to the majority. Through such discussion, all ministers cleansed their hearts and bodies before taking leave on the fourth day following their original appearance. Arriving at the Panchi Stram shortly, Wu Ji immediately took notice of Jiang Ziya and reported such to Prince Wen. Approaching the sage steadily, Prince Wen took Jiang Ziya's hand and welcomed him with colossal dignity. As San Yisheng elaborated the reasoning behind their appearance with many fine gifts, Jiang Ziya soon left his cottage and proceeded with Prince Wen on horsetop following many steady refusals to ride in the former's carriage. Arriving shortly before the capital, Jiang Ziya was appointed as prime minister and thus thoroughly assisted the western foothills with his knowledge and discipline. Chapter 25, Banquet for Spectres in the Palace. This chapter is titled Banquet for Spectres in the Palace. Once Han Rong, commander of Sisui Pass, obtained word on Jiang Ziya's appointment, he sent an urgent report to Morning Song. As Baigon attained such a report, he immediately presented himself before King Zhou and stated that since Jiang Ziya has effectively joined the West Grand Duke, there is a great possibility that the former could dwindle with Ji Chang's loyalty and thus convince him to assist the southern and eastern dukes in their campaign against the capital. Once king, Zhou told the prime minister that he will hold court as soon as possible lest any further threat may evolve. Zhong Hou, the Black Tiger, kneeled in presence before the king while stating the nearing finish of the Happy Terrace after 2 years and 4 months of determined work. As King Zhou quickly asked Zhong Hou's additional take on the appointment of Jiang Ziya, the latter stated that Ji Chang is very peace-loving and would never attack the capital unless it was forced upon him by his people. Jiang Ziya is also exceedingly old and is a large enough threat to waste an entire army upon due to the scarceness already experienced amongst the populace. King Zhou thus dismissed both Baigon and Chong Hou shortly while taking hold of his beloved Daji and heading out to see the Happy Terrace's progress. Arriving before the Happy Terrace and realizing its current completion, King Zhou happily walked through the terrace with immense joy and satisfaction at the glittering jade and gold spread before him so vividly. As a grand celebration took place inside the terrace, Baigon could not help but sigh in great distress at the people's suffering simply through the deluded selfishness of a single person. Asking Daji when the immortals and fairies will show themselves before the terrace as she originally stated, Daji had little time to react and immediately stated that a full moon before a cloudless sky would be the only signal for their essential coming. Knowing that the full moon will not show itself until 5 more days, Daji resumed her specter form 3 days later and headed immediately to the grave mound of Emperor Xian Yuan. While King Zhou was fast asleep, being welcomed by splendor, the nine-headed pheasant. Daji elaborated her reasoning before stating that all other specters present at the mound must transform themselves into immortals and come with her to the happy terrace within 2 days of time if they possess such an ability. If not, they are to remain at their original position. After this detailed discussion, Daji immediately returned to the palace on a gust of wind. As King Zhou asked the following morning about the immortals, Daji suggested to the king that 39 seats should be arranged while a minister, bygone in this case, is chosen to serve them wine at their will. Upon the quick approach of evening the following day, the seats were set forth while King Zhou gazed in great anticipation for the arrival of his immortal guests. Following the king's temporary leave of the terrace while Daji invited forth her honored spectre allies, Bygone was called shortly to serve the latter. Pouring them wine at every call, Bygone became rather confused as to why they looked like fairy spirits but possessed the most disgusting of odors. Indeed, he thought this was truly a very ill omen for the Shang dynasty. As everyone present began to drink wildly, Bygone noticed that some of the guests had tails sprouting forth upon further intoxication and was thus dismissed immediately. By Daji less he realized that they were specters, not immortals. Charging from the palace gates with great shame and rage as to lower himself to serve vile beasts, he soon approached Yellow Flying Tiger, who was on night patrol, and reported the incident at the Happy Terrace in full details. After ensuring to Bygone that he will deal with the issue, Yellow Flying Tiger ordered his 4 generals Huang Ming, Zhou Ji, Long Huan, and Wu Qian to each take 24 soldiers and patrol the districts around the east, north, west, and south. When these immortals are to leave the palace, they are to be pursued closely and stealthily back to their respective lairs. As each immortal spectre took their leave from the palace on foot due to great intoxication preventing any form of natural flight, all 39 that were present immediately returned to the grave mound of Emperor Xianyuan while being closely followed by General Zhou Ji alone the way. Informing Yellow Flying Tiger the following morning, the latter ordered his general to take 300 soldiers individually equipped with firewood and light them on fire while inside the mound hole to ensure destruction and no lack of possible escape for the specters. With Yellow Flying Tiger and Bygone calmly sitting by each other's side while drinking tea, Zhou Ji soon reported his success and thus called for them both to inspect the results. Arriving shortly before the grave mound and finding corpses laying about that stinked with burnt fur and flesh, Bygone ordered all corpses that possessed unscorched fur to be skinned so that he could present his majesty with a specialized fur coat as a warning to the evil spectre, Queen Daji. The 2 commanders thus returned to the palace in high spirits with such a grand display of the power and loyalty that they possessed in the name of the Shang dynasty. Chapter 26, Daji Plots Revenge. This chapter is titled Daji Plots Revenge. With the recent arrival of winter, heavy snow fell throughout the capital like pearls of great silver illuminating the sky and earth alike with beauty. Entering before King Zhou at the Happy Terrace, Prime Minister Bygone expressed his inner worry over the king's health at such a time of year and thus presented to the former a specialized fur robe of scarlet satin as a token of such affection and consideration. Once King Zhou had placed the beautiful robe around his body with immediate appreciation towards the Prime Minister, Daji meanwhile gazed forth from the curtains and noticed the specialized insignias only present on fox specters of her relation. She thus inwardly vowed that her hatred will only be sullied if she is to attain Bygone's heart as punishment, not bearing to see the skin of her relatives any further after the Prime Minister's leave. Daji convinced the king that the fur robe is below his level of dignity and should be placed elsewhere. Forming a plot to effectively end Bygone's life, Daji used her specter powers to reduce her beauty to a great extent one day as she sat drinking with King Zhou within the Happy Terrace. Realizing that the queen was strangely lacking in beauty, Daji shortly told the king that she possesses a sister known as Splendor, who is far more beautiful and elegant. Continuing with her words, Daji additionally stated that her sister left one day from Jizhou while stating that if she were to ever attain immortal characteristics, she would send Daji incense as a signal for her immediate return. Telling King Zhou that the incense has yet to be burned, it was decided that the following day shall be chosen for her sister's return. As King Zhou thus slept soundly that night, Daji resumed her specter form and met Splendor at the burned grave mound, fully knowing that her sister could not have possibly been touched by the former flames due to her highly evolved specter attributes. With Splendor's immediate informing to Daji that all 39 specter allies had been burnt to death and skinned, the latter wept while telling her sister a specific plan that essentially required her appearance before the palace the following day. Effectively attaining Splendor's consent, Daji happily returned to the palace. Throughout the remainder of the night while King Zhou lustfully desired to see his queen's elder sister as soon as possible throughout the next day. Once night finally approached, Daji advised King Zhou to conceal himself while the incense is burned, for if she is to notice a man of mortal qualities other than her sister, she may not wish to perform any such task. With the incense being burned at last, great thunderous winds brewed about throughout the palace while Splendor made her immediate appearance shortly thereafter before Daji. As Daji thus brought her sister to an inner chamber while sipping tea and exchanging conversation, King Zhou meanwhile peeped from the corner and instantly declared that he would give up his very own throne without the least regret if he could have sex with Splendor. Scratching his ears and coughing profusely to attain Daji's attention, the latter asked her sister if she could meet with the king. After clearly understanding his many signals, being convinced that King Zhou was worthy to sit by her side due to his rank, the king excitedly rushed forth and placed himself before Splendor immediately. Once Daji left the inner chamber for some time to change her clothing, King Zhou became exceedingly aroused after Splendor emitted many seductive glances and thus invited his honored guest to stroll with him on the terrace. Steadily pacing under the moonlight, King Zhou calmly fondled her breasts and body while declaring that if she were to stay by his side within the palace instead of living the life of an immortal, great wealth, rank, and honor would clearly be bestowed upon her in short time. Realizing that Splendor did not respond or offer any resistance to his many physical attacks, King Zhou carried her to a side court and passionately began unleashing his inner essence upon the latter within a neighboring bed. Upon Daji's return with great laughter over her sister's state, the king enjoyed the remainder of the night with his two lovers. As all ministers outside the palace gates possessed no knowing of King Zhou's new indulgences. With Splendor, Yellow Flying Tiger, the highest ranked among ministers, continued to train his 480,000 soldiers daily to ensure an effective protection of the neighboring passes. One day, however, Daji suddenly began to profusely spit forth blood while falling to the floor in a feverish state. King Zhou and Splendor immediately ran to her side while the latter stated that her sister possesses a strange heart attack disorder that reappears at random moments of time when intense anxiety and stress is felt. Additionally stating that a doctor by the name of Zhang Yuan cured such attacks with soup made from a highly developed human heart on great occasion back at Jizhou. It was indeed of great need for such a heart to be found among the populace and used at once to free Daji from her potential bonds of death. Acting as if she were performing divination, Splendor told King Zhou that Prime Minister Bygone is the only individual present within the capital that possesses such a heart. As King Zhou thus sent out many decrees to ensure Bygone's arrival before the palace, the Prime Minister meanwhile attained word from the 6th royal messenger that Daji possessed a strange illness and was needing of his arrival. Knowing that Daji was indeed an evil spectre, and any such incident that specifically called him forth in her name more than likely meant certain death, Bygone approached his wife in tears while stating that she should do her best to observe the rules and take good care of their children while he is gone. Explaining the situation thoroughly, Bygone rushed back to his study chambers and hastily followed the instructions that Jiang Ziya had given him earlier. Following his immediate arrival before King Zhou, and the learning of his heart being needed in order to cure Daji's ailment, the former retorted with great anger at the king and Daji's blatant hate towards him. Knowing that he had little choice before the situation, and his time was assuredly soon to end, Bygone knelt on the ground and ripped the heart from his chest while throwing it to the ground without a single droplet of blood whatsoever. As the Prime Minister walked quickly to the palace gates, avoiding each minister that appeared along the way, the former took the reins off his horse and strode towards the capital's northern gate. Chapter 27, Return of the Grand Old Master. This chapter is titled Return of the Grand Old Master. Striding through the northern palace gates in a state of complete silence, Yellow Flying Tiger was very worried over the current situation and thus sent forth Generals Zhou Ji and Huang Ming to follow him immediately. As Bygone approached a woman hawker along the way that declared humans as incapable of living without a heart, a sudden pulse surged through the former's veins violently, causing him to fall to the ground with blood surging profusely from his chest. With Zhou Ji and Huang Ming's arrival shortly, they inspected the deceased Prime Minister's body closely and realized that his heart was strangely nowhere to be found. Unfortunately for Bygone, however, he still would have remained alive if the woman previously had noted that humans can live even without a heart, for such was the trickery behind Jiang Ziya's magical note. Once the two generals had arrived before the palace gates and immediately reported their resolution on the incident to Yellow Flying Tiger, all ministers present sat heartbroken at such an absurd end to their treasured Prime Minister. Xiao Zhao, a junior minister, could not hold back his emotions as he strode within the happy terrace prepared to put a well-deserved end to King Zhou's life. Cutting down any guard that dared to oppose his path towards the king, Xiao Zhao shortly arrived before the tyrant and charged at him with his flying cloud sword. As he cleaved at the king's flesh with great renown, King Zhou managed to grab a hold of the blade while swiftly throwing it off to the side. Realizing the situation was rather grim, Xiao Zhao ground his teeth until they bled profusely before launching himself off of the terrace to his death. As all ministers around grieved over their second loss, Bygone's body was soon returned while a funeral was held immediately for his countless loyal services to the Shang dynasty. News soon came about during their funeral that none other than Grand Old Master Wenzhong was finally returning to the capital. All ministers thus made quick preparations to meet the former outside Morning Song's gates, arriving shortly atop his great dragon unicorn. When Zhong gazed towards the capital and realized that a funeral was taking place due to many paper pennants flying about, inspecting the reason for such, he was astonished to hear that Vice Prime Minister Bygone had died, and thus entered immediately to see many gorgeous buildings such as the Happy Terrace all around him. Dismounting before his fellow colleagues at the palace gates roadside, the Grand Old Master expressed his greetings while entering the Grand Hall. being informed by Yellow Flying Tiger of the many torture devices created and the unjust deaths of countless loyal ministers throughout his years of departure. When Zhong's third eye burned red with rage as he ordered King Zhou to ascend his throne at once, with Daji joyfully drinking the soup made from bygones heart, King Zhou was rather frightened to hear that the grand old master had returned, but nonetheless left immediately in his royal carriage to see the dignified latter sitting before Wen Zhong within the grand hall. The latter thoroughly elaborated his complete victory at the North Sea district while inspecting the reason as to why 2 of the 4 Grand Dukes have risen in rebellion, being told that Jiang Huanchu and Yi Chongyu were executed for conspiring against the throne, even though the king did not possess any such witness that could prove such a case. When Zhong became exceedingly wrathful and reprimanded the king for the blatant unbenevolent qualities that he possesses, telling the former that he will personally endeavor to set the country in order in the name of King Di, his former master. When Zhong told the king to return to his apartments while he plans out his next move for the dynasty's benefit, as King Zhou left without uttering a single word against the grand old master, the latter asked his fellow colleagues to join him at his residence. Arriving shortly before the Silver Peace Hall with each minister present, Yellow Flying Tiger came forth from the crowd to personally elaborate the full happenings from Daji's entry to Baigon's death. Now fully knowing the ultimate woes of the Shang dynasty, when Zhong let out a great roar of rage before declaring that he will seal the gates for 3 days while presenting to King Zhou a memorial upon the 4th. Approaching the king on the 4th day with his written memorial, King Zhou placed it before his desk and was handed by the former an ink slab and writing brush to sign his name on 10 individual proposals. King Zhou signed his consent on all but 1, the destruction of the Happy Terrace, 5, the deposition of Daji, and 6, the beheading of Fei Zhong and Yu Hun, to his warning to all flatterers, with Wen Zhong's suggestion to the king that the remaining 3 proposals essentially need to be fulfilled if he is to prevent the Shang dynasty from falling to utter ruin. The latter stood forth without uttering a word. Fei Zhong, who did not see the true seriousness of the situation, moved forward to speak with King Zhou before being stopped by the Grand Old Master, as Fei Zhong began to state the former's propositions as a clear insult to His Majesty and violation to the general rights of inferior to superior. When Zhong seethed with rage at his words and thus charged his fist into Fei Zhong's skull, causing the latter to tumble violently down the grand hall steps in an injured state. Seeing Fei Zhong lying on the floor with a bruised head and face, Yu Hun ran before the Grand Old Master while declaring his actions as being the equivalent to beating King Zhou himself. Learning that the man standing before him is none other than Yu Hun, Zhong ran forward and smashed his fist into the former's face, sending him crashing 7 yards past the Grand Hall stairway in a near-death state. Grand Old Master Wen Zhong followed by ordering the 2 ministers to be taken to the palace gate for their awaited execution immediately afterwards. Just as Fei Zhong and Yu Hun were to have their heads cleaved off, King Zhou ran forthward to Wen Zhong and pleaded for the 2 ministers to be placed before court and tried according to law for their former actions. Observing the king's frightened manner, and realizing that it is a crime for the former to possess such intense fear towards him, Wen Zhong ordered the 2 ministers to be placed in jail and await their trial while the 3 remaining proposals are carefully discussed within the near future. With such grand resolve to ensure political reform is effectively instilled, news soon reached the capital that King Pingling of the East Sea district had unfortunately declared independence. As Wen Zhong attained word of such, he appeared before Yellow Flying Tiger's residence, shortly and asked the latter who would be more fitting to take care of the situation. After they both carefully considered their next move, Grand Old Master stated that he will take 200,000 soldiers to the East Sea District while Flying Tiger remains at the palace for internal defense. Additionally stating that he will deal with the state's administration at his best following his return. 1. Zhong appeared before King Zhou the following morning to elaborate the current happenings within the East. Being very delighted internally at 1. Zhong's words of departure, both Yellow Flying Tiger and King Zhou personally escorted the Grand Old Master beyond the eastern gate of Morning Song. As the king handed Wen Zhong a glass of wine, the master handed it instead to Yellow Flying Tiger for the exceeded loyalty and administrative renown that he shall elaborate while he himself is gone, telling the king to listen well to his ministers and destroy the evil of the capital at all costs possible during his leave. Cannons roared in all directions to signal the Grand Old Master's departure. Chapter 28, Punitive Expedition against the North Grand Dukedom. This chapter is titled Punitive Expedition against the North Grand Dukedom. Greatly delighted at Grand Old Master's leave, King Zhou returned to the palace. Shortly while ordering Fei Zhong and Yu Hun to be freed, for the king labeled them as being wrongly accused when they are clearly loyal and undeserving of death. Now that Wen Zhong was effectively gone, King Zhou knew that he could return to his original ways without anyone truly able to criticize his actions. As spring raged forthward, spreading great beauty throughout the capital, King Zhou declared to his ministers that a party within the royal garden shall be performed. Finding the garden as beautiful as the Panglai fairyland, the peony pavilion of old along with the brocade hall could be seen with great extravagant detail. Holding a banquet within the peony pavilion, the king enjoyed his own personal table with splendor and Daji, while other high-ranking ministers such as Yellow Flying Tiger and Wei Zi sighed at such a grand celebration taking place even though the land was clearly rampant with diluted chaos and constant rebellion. Thanking the king for their party after midday, King Zhou convinced every former minister present to stay and drink away their woes from dusk till night. As Daji and Splendor became exceedingly intoxicated while sleeping within the royal library, Daji lusted to attain human flesh immediately and thus swooped about the midnight sky in her specter form, with attendants shouting about that a specter had been seen in the skies. Yellow Flying Tiger left his seat hurriedly as he thrashed one of the pavilion's railings at the horrible beast, ordering the hunting hawk with golden eyes to be unleashed immediately. Due to the lack of his weapon's effectiveness, the hawk soon soared to the specter while clawing violently with its great talons. Being clearly wounded, Daji hid herself underneath some rocks within a neighboring artificial hill. King Zhou thus ordered his attendants to start digging away in hopes of capturing the specter. Unexpectedly finding an incredibly large pile of half-eaten corpses beneath the rock mound, the king became horrified at the reality of the situation. Specters were present within the Shang dynasty and are the evident reason for such disaster. As King Zhou awoke the following morning after unhappily excusing his ministers the former evening, he stared in alarm at Daji, who possessed many scratches across her face. Being told that she happened to scratch her face upon overhanging branches within the royal garden, King Zhou told her to be very careful of her new surroundings considering the specter incident. Pondering over what the king had said, Daji vaguely remembered through her intoxication that Yellow Flying Tiger had been the minister who thrashed at her with his pole, and she thus immediately vowed revenge against the former at all costs possible. Meanwhile, Jiang Ziya had shortly obtained report on King Ping Ling's rebellion and Chong Houwu's brutal treating of the people during the Happy Terrace's development. vying with rage at Chang's qualities, Jiang Ziya approached Prince Wen and suggested to him that if the Grand Duke of the North, Chong Houhu, is effectively destroyed, considering his many acts of tyranny through blatant brutality and impulsiveness, King Zhou would be assisted greatly in the path of becoming a benevolent ruler such as that of Yao or Shun of old. Being delighted at a chance to effectively help King Zhou as he accepted the Prime Minister's proposal, Jiang Ziya offered himself to be the commander of the army on the prince's behalf. After declaring that he too will assist Jiang Ziya on the battlefront, Prince Wen chose an auspicious date before charging out of the capital with 100,000 soldiers. Many individuals present within the western foothills, especially the original Morning Song refugees, rejoiced in great happiness at the prince's departure to destroy Chong Houhu. As the army arrived before Chong City, the North Grand Dukedom, after a few days of travel, Chong Houhu was meanwhile present within Morning Song while Chong Yinbiao, the duke's son, attained headship over the city. Attaining information shortly that Ji Chang was commander over the forces stationed outside his dukedom, Yinbiao grinned in delight at a chance to do away with the former in order to better the reputation of his father, even if Ji Chang arrived with intentions other than battle. With full resolve to wipe out Chong Houhu at all costs possible, Jiang Ziya ordered General Nangong Kui to head to the front and unleash the first battle immediately. As Huang Yuanji charged out of the city gates with a contingent of soldiers, the former fiercely clashed blades with Nangong in great vigor and heated rage at Ji Chang's clear intentions to destroy them. Attaining word in short time that Huang Yuanji had lost his life by the enemy general's blade, Yinbiao pounded his desk in rage while ordering a fierce engagement of mortal combat to be unleashed the following day. With both forces aligned before each other the next morning, Jiang Ziya stepped forward from his army while taking the appearance of an honored celestial in the eyes of Chong Yinbiao, barking at Yinbiao for defending the evil ways of his father. The latter barked back at Jiang Ziya angrily while ordering a general from his side to quickly kill the opposition. As Prince Wen charged before Yinbiao, lest Jiang Ziya experienced any harm, the former profusely yelled at Yinbiao, stating that it would be better off for him to simply dismount from his horse and experience death instead of opposing the will of heaven any further. With both sides fiercely clashing blades in great resolve, Chong Yinbiao additionally threw himself into combat in order to take Ji Chang's head if at all possible. Once two generals under the North Dukedom had been effectively slain, Yinbiao ordered a full-scale retreat, urgently setting forth a meeting to discuss how they are to repel the enemy forces. Everyone present under Yinbiao had no clue what to do. Seeing this as the perfect chance to strike forth at the city, Prince Wen declined Jiang Ziya's offer to attack their dukedom lest the innocent were to be hurt and his benevolence would be known amongst the country as mere folly. A letter was thus immediately sent to Black Tiger Chong Houhu in hopes that he could assist them in taking over Chong City. Chapter 29, Clash Between Two Grand Dukes. This chapter is titled Clash Between Two Grand Dukes. As General Nangong Kui left to Chaozhou at immediate pace, he soon took lodgings within an official hotel upon his arrival at Black Tiger Chong Houhu's residence. Leaving his office upon Nangong's reported arrival, Houhu soon obtained a letter from Jiang Ziya on the current situation. Reading the letter over continuously, he decided that it will be for the greater good if he puts an end to his brother in the name of the people, despite the blood that he is to stain on the faces of his ancestors through such an action. Before he departed, 3,000 soldiers were individually chosen to accompany him from Chaozhou while his son, Chong Yingwan, ensures the Protection of the city during his leave. As Chonghehu arrived before the north Grand Dukedom's city gates in short time, Yin Biao emerged forth and earnestly welcomed his fellow uncle, who had arrived with reinforcements after obtaining report on the situation. Sitting within the main hall by his cousin's side, Chonghehu asked the true reason as to why Ji Chang has suddenly attacked their residence. The latter stated that a man by the name of Jiang Ziya said earlier that they arrived out of some form of malice towards his father and have thus attacked with most probable intentions to kill him. Easily seeing such words as accurate and on the side of rationality, Chonghehu charged from the city gates to do battle against the opposing forces of Prince Wen at the following dawn. Jiang Ziya was completely rational of Chonghehu's intentions upon the arrival of Nangongqua and thus sent the latter to do battle with Black Tiger. As both warriors battled with great renown, Chonghehu silently told Nangong to feign retreat after giving up ground as a pretext to the combat's end. Seeing the enemy general flee while Hehu did not pursue in any form, Yin Biao approached his uncle and inspected the reason for such an action. Being told Jiang Ziya is widely known for his magical renown, there alone arose the chance that the former would use such tactics in order to ensure his victory at all costs possible. Considering the additional rashful ways of such pursuit, as Hehu and Yin Biao thus returned to the city, Black Tiger stated that their probability of victory should increase dramatically if Hohu and King Zhou are effectively contacted and informed of the current happenings upon Chong City. With Sun Rong thus being sent to the capital, he arrived before Chonghehu's residence first and handed the Duke the intended letter. Pounding his desk in utter rage at the ill-gratitude and treacherous motives that Ji Chang possesses towards him despite the many sacrifices that he has made in order to ensure the safety of the former, Chonghehu presented himself to King Zhou and elaborated the current case on hand. After the king had ensured his minister that he shall back him with soldiers if the need be, Hohu confidently set out with 3,000 soldiers from the capital in quick pace. As soon as Chonghehu had obtained word that his brother was heading to Chong City, he told General Gao Ding to await in ambush inside the city gates and only emerge to seize the Grand Duke when the rattling of a sword is effectively heard. After Shingong had been told in addition to arrest the entire Cheng family and bring them to the Zhou camp upon Hehu's emerging from the city, both Chonghehu and Yin Biao set out shortly to await the arrival of Hohu. As the Grand Duke was thus invited inside of the city gates, all soldiers suddenly seized both Hohu and his son once the sound of rattling had been heard. Being fully rational that if Chonghehu was effectively seized and destroyed before the eyes of the people, the Chong family would not only live on in an honorable prestige but his own reputation will soar due to reinforcing the greater good despite the blood that is to be shed. After thus placing the Duke before Jiang Ziya's feet and warmly greeting Ji Chang, Prince Wen became displeased at Hehu's actions for being ruthless, informing the prince that such an action is for the greater good and well on the side of virtue. Jiang Ziya ordered Chonghehu and his son to be placed before him while their heads are immediately cut from their bodies, having no original intention whatsoever to kill the Grand Duke and his son. Prince Wen blinded his eyes from the sight of their decapitated heads while shrieking with fear and disgust. Ordering Chonghehu to free all remaining captives, Jiang Ziya and Prince Wen took their leave from Chong City while Hehu remained to govern the people as the new Grand Duke of the North. Unfortunately, however, upon their return to the western foothills, Prince Wen began to see Chonghehu's decapitated head at every moment he happened to close his eyes, and his health thus slowly decreased out of clear disgust and resentment. Once Wei Zi, the secretariat of Morning Song obtained word that Chong Hohu had been executed while his younger brother, Chong Heihu, took control over the former's territory. He realized that the threat of Ji Chang would become even more greater due to Heihu's independence from the capital, and thus informed King Zhou immediately lest any further trouble evolved. Seething with rage at the North Grand Duke's death, upon the hearing of such an incident, King Zhou ordered a contingent of soldiers to bring back both Ji Chang and Chong Heihu for trial. However, Li Ren moved forward from the ministers present and stated that if he were to effectively act in the benefit of Chong Heihu, who was widely despised by the ministers and people alike, then they naturally would feel great malice towards him for supporting one of criminal traits rather than the loyal. Realizing the rationality in his words, King Zhou decided to abandon the idea of attacking Heihu altogether. Unfortunately, back at the western foothills, however, Prince Wen's health worsened day by day, forcing constant medical attention from doctors within the capital. As Jiang Ziya knelt before his master one day, upon the former's request, Prince Wen calmly told him from his bed to never ally the western foothills with the rebelling nobles at any costs whatsoever, due to the many unroyal actions that had been taken earlier that proved a level of disloyalty towards the king's wishes. Peace must always remain between the West and Morning Song as atonement for their past defiance. Gazing at the tear-filled eyes of Prince Wen, and seeing the indomitable spirit of loyalty that surges through the former's heart, Jiang Ziya ensured that he shall eternally obey such instructions. With GFA's sudden entrance, Prince Wen told his son that he shall take his place as governor over the western foothills following his death, but at no account should he dare listen to any words that may harm the king during his succession. After telling the Prime Minister in GFA to instill virtue and true loyalty to both the king and the people so that the future generations can possess eternal happiness, Prince Wen breathed his last, dying at the age of 97 and being given the title of King Wen of Zhou. Following King Wen's funeral, Jiang Ziya proposed to all ministers present that GFA should succeed his father with the title of West Grand Duke in King Wu. As all ministers were risen one rank with additional benefits, the 200 marquises came constantly to offer their obeisance to the new king over the western foothills. Once Commander Han Rome of Sishi Pass had obtained word on GFA's succession to the throne and the unexpected death of Ji Chang, a messenger was immediately sent before the capital's secretariat. With both Yao Zhong and Prince Weizi being the first to hear of such urgent news, Yao Zhong declared that he shall see the king on such a matter no matter what the outcome may be. Chapter 30, Incidents Leading to a Rebellion. This chapter is titled Incidents Leading to a Rebellion. Ascending the Star. Picking Belvedere and kowtowing before the king, Yao Zhao thoroughly declared that now GFA has succeeded the deceased Ji Chang as king over the western foothills. Jiang Ziya should easily be able to influence the former through ambitious motives of attacking the capital. However, King Zhou was not the least worried, for he believed that Jiang Ziya was nothing more than a vile trickster that would sow hate and ill-trust in the hearts of any other potential rebel of the capital. GFA in addition was considered a mere child that lacked any disciple in the art of war and should thus not be taken as a serious threat to any extent. After leaving the Belvedere in great disappointment over King Zhou's words, Yao Zhao knew that King Wu must be the destined savior that shall put the tyrannical king to his eternal rest. As the New Year's Day celebrating King Zhou's 21st year of reign over the Shang dynasty had arrived in rather short time, ministers went about to offer their traditional greetings to the king, while each of their wives paid obeisance to Queen Daji. When the day's natural formalities had drifted by, Lady Jia, the wife of Yellow Flying Tiger, entered the palace to offer her personal greetings to Daji before visiting her sister-in-law, concubine Huang. At the very moment that Daji had attained word that Lady Jia was none other than Yellow Flying Tiger's wife, she grinned in great delight at such a chance to attain revenge against the prince. As Lady Jia and Daji alike both offered their respective greetings, Daji realized that the former was 8 years older than her at the age of 41. Asking her fellow lady if they would like to become sworn sisters, Lady Jia refuted at first but freed herself from such modesty after realizing that they were both similar in aristocratic rank. After they had drunken 2 glasses of wine, Jia quickly hid herself within the rear hall upon Daji's suggestion once King Zhou had arrived to see his queen. Following such a long day of hard work, clearly seeing that 2 cups were sitting one across the other in front of Daji, King Zhou inspected who had been present. Being told that Lady Jia, wife of Yellow Flying Tiger, had been present earlier, Daji told the king that he should see her. Rather reluctant at such a suggestion, for it would violate the rights between king and minister, King Zhou was eventually convinced after hearing that she was not only extraordinarily beautiful, but could be considered his relative out of ties between Yellow Flying Tiger's concubine sister. As Daji thus approached Lady Jia shortly after, and asked for her to walk together at the star-picking mansion in order to enjoy the scenery around them, Lady Jia had little choice but to comply, for they can only meet 1 time a year according to the rites. Walking along the upper balcony and gazing forth at a large pit full of snakes and skeletons, Lady Jia became frightened at the explanation that such a method was in need simply to uphold disciple within the capital. Accepting a few more cups of wine from Daji after sitting down with the latter, concubine Huang meanwhile became worried at the hearing that her sister-in-law was present at the star-picking mansion with Daji, and thus immediately sent one of her maids to carefully observe the queen's motives. With report that King Zhou is currently ascending the star-picking mansion, Lady Jia stood outside of the balcony while the king made his approach. Following his arrival, and immediate informing that the woman standing outside the balcony is Yellow Flying Tiger's wife, King Zhou became very lustful over her beautiful looks. Being told by Daji to enter forth and sit by the king's side, she gradually accepted such an order lest she were to attain any such punishment as earlier seen if the slightest defiance were to be shown. Begging, however, to leave the king's side to show her true loyalty through modesty, King Zhou encouraged her to sit by his side and enjoy a personal glass of wine. Feeling as if her honor would be torn apart if she sat by the side of such a wicked tyrant, Lady Jia took her glass of wine and threw it into King Zhou's face as a showing of her hatred towards his vile ways, even though she clearly realized that such an action would probably cost her life and bring about further mayhem within her family. Lady Jia was resolute to preserve her honor at all costs possible. As King Zhou ordered his guards to seize her, Lady Jia ran to the balcony rails and exclaimed a final vow of farewell to her beloved husband and children before leaping forth to her unfortunate death. Attaining word shortly that Lady Jia had lost her life, concubine Huang seethed with rage while running up the star-picking mansion's stairs immediately, thrusting forth at Daji and physically beating her for conjectured treachery. King Zhou told his honored concubine that Daji is truly innocent, for Lady Jia acted out of her own irrational impulse and died because of it, not in any mood whatsoever to stop beating Daji or hear the king's words. At that, Huang unthinkingly smacked King Zhou violently in the face. Great rage thus filled the breast of King Zhou, while he grabbed the sadistic maiden by the hair and lunged her forcefully off the mansion's rails. grabbing hold of Daji and holding her in his arms in great sadness over his beloved's condition. The attendants under Lady Jia were meanwhile informed by a palace maiden of the unfortunate events that came about at the star-picking mansion. As Yellow Flying Tiger was enjoying the New Year's feast throughout the evening with his right-hand generals and fellow brothers, Lady Jia's attendants ran to his residence immediately and informed him of the disaster incident with his wife and sister-in-law. With everyone in great alarm while Yellow Flying Tiger sat in silence, Wang Ming approached his master and told him that it is clearly evident that they should seek a new ruler to serve under, considering Yellow Flying Tiger is the head of all military affairs and state headship. His reputation would be the first to suffer by the neighboring people who are rising in rebellion. Thus by rebelling, he would be looked upon as a hero that strikes at any injustice that may befall his people upon circumstance. Knowing that his reputation would effectively soar with the greater majority if he issued forth his rebellion, Yellow Flying Tiger still considered such an action as being far too risky due to solely rendering the incident with his wife running after his 4 generals and telling them to discuss the issue further before being completely resolved to leave the capital for good. Each of the 4 returned with Yellow Flying Tiger to his residence. Raising his sword unexpectedly before his generals, Yellow Flying Tiger declared that his family has served honorably under the Shang dynasty for over 7 generations, and the death of a single woman who is unknown to the former is most definitely not reason enough to destroy such honor through rebellion. As General Zhou Ji approached his master and declared that all who are unknowing of his glory and rank would only believe that he attained such high rank through his wife's beauty instead of progressive loyalty through generations, Yellow Flying Tiger realized the reality of his reputation and thus ordered a full flight from Morning Song immediately, being suggested by General Guang Ming to challenge King Zhou to a battle within the capital before leave. Less his master regretted his decision in the future, Yellow Flying Tiger consented to such a suggestion as he equipped his armor and strode towards the palace gates atop his divine ox. Once General Zhou Ji had declared to the guards that they are rebelling, and if they do not pull King Zhou out of the palace in short time they will be slaughtered in entirety. The guards fearfully fled through the gates and informed the king of such a sudden situation. Bursting with curiosity at such a report, King Zhou personally put on his armor, took his cutlass, and smashed open the gates to do away with the rebelling Yellow Flying Tiger at the crack of dawn. As King Zhou aligned his royal army before the rebelling forces outside the palace, Yellow Flying Tiger looked into the king's fiery eyes and felt a level of shame for his actions at hand. Once generals Huang Ming and Zhou Ji had clearly noticed such hesitation on his part, they both unleashed their cutlasses and clashed with great renown against King Zhou immediately. Originally intending on clarifying the facts with the king before taking any physical action, Yellow Flying Tiger felt greatly displeased but nonetheless strode forth to assist his 2 generals. Even though King Zhou possessed great skill with the cutlass, he could not handle a 3-pronged attack and was thus forced to flee through the palace gates following 30 rounds of battle. Grabbing hold of his 2 generals lest they attempted to chase the fleeing king, Yellow Flying Tiger rode through the capital's western gates while catching up shortly with the rest of his family along the way. As King Zhou meanwhile returned to court and felt a high level of remorse and rage at the former incidents, many people began hearing of the rebellion and thus approached the king to hear the reason for such a sudden turn of events. Informing the ministers present that Lady Jia, Yellow Flying Tiger's sister, impulsively threw herself from the star-picking mansion simply out of her own personal dignity, and Madame Huang, the sister-in-law of the former lady, committed suicide after being informed of such news. King Zhou asked what should be done at such a present time of confusion that had little to do with him. As everyone present began pondering in silence, it was soon heard that grand old master Wen Zhong had returned from the East Sea district. Entering the palace gates and being warmly welcomed by each minister, Zhong became worried as to why his old friend Yellow Flying Tiger was not seen, and he thus approached King Zhou to inspect the reason for such. Being informed by the king that Yellow Flying Tiger had rebelled most likely due to the elaborated incident with concubine Huang and Lady Jia, Wen Zhong clearly realized the reality of the situation, knowing that his comrade would never rebel unless the circumstances were indeed exceedingly crucial and in need of amendment. Suggesting to King Zhou that he shall return with Yellow Flying Tiger only if his case is personally considered as justified and without punishment on the part of the king, ministers began to shout about, saying that Flying Tiger's actions are deserving of punishment no matter what the case may have been. Excusing such pointless dribble nonetheless, when Zhong ordered Generals Li Ji and Yu Qing to send urgent reports to the Good Dream and Green Dragon passes so that Yellow Flying Tiger's route of escape is cut off during his future pursuit.